The fact that I've been here for 27 years living in the UAE, and for me it's been such a pleasant and wonderful experience. So I'm now on a mission to discover other people's experiences on how they have made the UAE their home. In today's episode, we go to Sharjah University, which rose from humble beginnings in 1997 to become a leading national-international place of education, innovation, and scientific research. Our guest today, Dr Ghanim, joined the university in its inception and has been there ever since. Today we will hear his story and experiences and why he chose the UAE as his home. So Dr Ghanim, if we could hear a bit about yourself, who is Dr Ghanim?
Well, this is a very difficult question indeed. Because it will take me to the early years of my study. The first thing I would remember is that in the primary school, in the first year, I remember I took part in a popular demonstration chanting يا يقول اطلع برا الجزائر صارت حرة. Algeria has become a free country, so they go out. You see, a 6-year-old child with this experience would be very important, especially very lately I knew from my friends that during the weekdays, on Thursday especially, the flag raising event, I used to read poems in the morning. Now I grew in Samarra, basically very much impacted by the idea that my town was a historical town because it is the capital of the Abbasid Empire. And it seemed that I got some sort of interest in the heritage issue, history and heritage and culture. So when I moved to Baghdad in my first year of the high school, I started joining many activities in the field of literature and culture. And also I started some sort of activities in journalism. This is why, besides my academic studies, I joined the Baghdad Observer, and soon I became the chair of the international department.
Okay, so this was after university, I am assuming, or was it within?
No, it was in fact parallel to my study.
Okay, so that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and then when I finished my BA in Al-Mustansiriya University, and by the way, Al-Mustansiriya, this name goes back to history because in the Abbasid era, we had the Al-Mustansiriya school. They say it was the first university in the Islamic world.
Okay.
And then when I finished my BA studies in literature, in fact, it was a surprise because all my colleagues and friends know me that I was a man of science. And this is why I went to study engineering. But after 45 days, I changed. I thought that it was not me.
Okay.
So I moved to the Department of English. So graduating with BA, this was not enough for me. So I joined the MA program. And then part of that study was in Lancaster University in England.
Okay, so you went to the masters, you went to England?
To England.
I have one question before we go to the journey to England. Was it something back then in your home country of Iraq? Was it something strange to specialize in English language, or was it something that was kind of?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I may tell you something so important in the history of Iraqi and Arabic poetry. Badr Shakir Sayab in the 40s of last century was studying Arabic, and he finished the second year, and all of a sudden, coming from nowhere, he asked to join the English department.
Okay.
And then he was accepted in the third year. In one of my books, I tried to find out, I traced the issue, but I didn't find the answer. How come that a department accepts a student who comes from a different discipline in the third year? And that was why, because reading English poetry was so popular in Iraq, and there was a very rich program of English in the colleges there. So no, on the contrary, studying English was so common, and the program was so popular.
Great. So then, as you mentioned, you went over to the UK, to Lancaster University, to do your master's. I'm assuming that was obviously in English literature.
Exactly, yeah. And then I came back to start my job as a teacher at the university.
Okay.
And one interesting issue is I was one day summoned by the chair of the department and said, Ghanim, I want you to teach Shakespeare. I said, me? He said, yes. I have a teacher who holds a PhD, but she's not doing well. And I believe that you will do the job well. And I started teaching Shakespeare when I was very young. But when I went for the PhD to England, I was more focused on poetry. So I studied poetry, and it was a comparative study between Western poetry and Arabic poetry.
Okay. So we heard, so you came here, I believe, 1994.
Exactly.
So what were your impressions? Of course, you come from Iraq, and it's I would imagine to some extent there's a lot of similarities, but what were the expectations, should I say, rather than impressions? What were the expectations before coming here? And then following on from that, what were your first impressions when you actually arrived?
In fact, before I came here, I taught for 5 years in a university in Libya.
Okay.
And that gave me a very rich experience. I taught also for a very short while in Jordan. But when I moved here, in fact, I was hoping that I bring my own rich experience with me to a very young university like this, because I knew then that the university started just a few months before my arrival. So I thought, my impression was, well, I'm going to a country I didn't visit before, but from a cultural point of view, I believe that there will be no challenges here, because we belong almost to the same region and to the same history and language. Yeah. So, in fact, no major challenges were faced at all.
So I guess, you know, you've been here for a very long time. What are your most favorite places in Sharjah or the UAE, and why are those places, you know, special to you, or they're your favorites?
Yeah. The first place is the university, the campus. It is a wonderful, marvelous place. I have visited so many countries and campuses, but our campus is wonderful. But talking about places to visit, in fact, what invited me to believe that we have in this country so beautiful places is the new focus on Kalba, Khorfakan, and the other places. So Kalba and Khorfakan are now featuring as among the most beautiful places in the region. And in fact, they are attracting many people there. So I usually enjoy the meeting area between the sea and the mountains. This is so beautiful. And possibly you remember that I'm specialized in poetry. So I'm looking for the romantic places.
I guess what I could add is, well, that the fact that we see in Sharjah, which stands out very clearly, how not just the people but the ruler, Sheikh Sultan, has really pushed for this cultural, educational, to make Sharjah get the name that it was named, the capital of culture. So we can see, that definitely and no doubt his push and his vision has helped Sharjah and this university, and like you mentioned, Sharjah as a whole, become what it is today.
Well, in fact, because I belong to this university, which is chaired by His Highness, I would not be complimenting him. But he is so devoted to culture, to the extent that I spend sometimes so long watching his tours just to start a new program related to culture. And I have been doing a lot of tasks and activities for the cultural institutions in the country, but especially in Sharjah. And I have seen how developed the culture project is. By the way, one of the latest achievements is the Holy Quran Center. When I watched the film about it, in fact, I was so overwhelmed by the beauty and the quality of activities in the center.
So Dr. Ghanim, you mentioned, that you've been here now for 22 years in Sharjah University. So you must have seen how the English language or English literature has really changed now and really developed over time. It must be so much different to what it was when you first joined.
It is indeed. I do remember the idea of the English department came here as if it was something foreign, not common to the institution, because mainly speaking, people prefer courses or disciplines that have to do with the market rather than with the, let us say, knowledge. But over the years, I have noticed how enthusiastic students are in studying, especially not only the language, but the literature. And the cultural studies are very important these days.
Yes.
So the change is tremendous, in fact. And the department developed to the extent that we received the report of the accreditation team of the Ministry of Higher Education, nominating our department to be a center for excellence.
Oh, great.
And this is wonderful. And this is why we grew into postgraduate studies. We do have now a very prosperous MA degree in translation. Besides, just last year, we started a PhD program in translation and linguistics.
So I guess my next question would be, in that case, is your students. How many students who study this speciality, whether it's language, literature, translation, are actually UAE nationals?
Well, I don't have exact numbers, but I can say many of them are from the Emirates, from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the
Specifically in this field?
Exactly.
Because we know that, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about this a bit later on, but we know that Sharjah University is one of the high ranking for international students. So you get a lot of students from around the region, MENA, Middle East and North Africa. But it's interesting to hear now that you get more people focused on English language, because they used to be scared of it, didn't they? I think you could say it wasn't something everyone used to think, like, I can never learn English. But now we see that attitudes are changing, and we have many capable, many, if not most people now are very high and proficient in English language.
Yeah. What surprises me is to find the students, local students, who speak the language like native speakers, you see? And this is wonderful. It seems that some of the schools are contributing to this. We have excellent students, and you should not be surprised if I tell you that some of them usually graduate with A, straight A. So this means that the study of the language and the literature is now very prosperous.
Now, I guess, definitely I have to ask you, you've been here for, as we've mentioned, 22 years. So maybe you could tell us a bit about what Sharjah, we all know what Sharjah University, or most of us know that Sharjah University is one of the leading, not only in the UAE, but in the whole region. And definitely, even on international standards, is up there, as a high level, recognized. You mentioned your department and the Language Center of Excellence, but how was it when you first came? We're talking 1998?
And, exactly. Well, in fact, we were learning from other sister institutions. We were building the department, and then we took the lead. Now, at the level of the university, you know that now we have the College of Medicine, one of the great institutions. Yes. And I have noticed that many of our students, graduates of this university, are recognized easily, even in the Western countries. Once it is Sharjah University. So
Yes.
people would get positions, whether to follow further studies or to work in the market. So I think this is a great jump. It's a leap, in fact. And now you see the diversity of the courses. We have various courses in medicine, in engineering, in addition to the other fields in humanities. So, I mean, it's a wonderful leap into the future.
So what I've noticed being here for such a long time is that you find now that even a lot of the Western expats who live here, when it comes to sending their children to universities, a lot of them, even though they have campuses of universities back home in the States or the US or UK, wherever it may be, a lot of them choose the University of Sharjah or the American University of Sharjah. So that's really interesting, and that
Exactly.
shows, you know, how far the university has come.
Exactly. In fact, if I compare the university at the time when I joined it, 1998, and the university now, then we will definitely express our delight that it made a breakthrough in almost every field. Especially, you know, possibly that I don't recall, but I think it is at the world level that we have diversity at the level of students and the level of the professors.
I was going to say, even the professors is very diverse.
Yes, and I do remember I was a chair of the department for 4 years. And when we announced a job, the applications came in hundreds from everywhere in the world, even from the United States and Britain. And that means, well, this is an attraction place. The position of the university is definitely unique in the world now. And the reputation as well, when you go, when you contribute to a conference in the world, when they hear the name University of Sharjah, it is not coming from nowhere. No, it is the University of Sharjah that all know to be distinguished.